Yes? No? Maybe? All right. Okay, hey, I'm ready. We're ready. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is Extreme Pwning, Remote Site Security. So our speakers will be Quincy Jackson, a.k.a. Q-Jax, and Mr. Richard Peters. Not Jay-Z. He is not Jay-Z. I tried to get his autograph earlier. He just looked at me. He's like, you crazy people. So Quincy Jackson, a.k.a. Q-Jax, has multiple certifications to include CISSP, CEH, GCIA, GWAPT, and GREM. Is that pronounced Grim? He is a red team and global assessment consultant with over 15 plus years of InfoSec experience. Quincy recently served as a technical specialist focusing on defense systems, design, and customization in response to high-profile cyber threats against the oil and gas industry. Don't say Stuxnet. Mr. Peters is also multi-certified CISA, CISSP, QSA, and is a director with Berkeley Research Group LLC, or to you and me, it's BRG. With the technology advisory practice, specializing in information security and compliance. He brings over 15 years of experience managing, performing, and delivering IT security solutions. This experience includes technology risk management, IT auditing, IT security assessments, internal auditing, attack and penetration testing services, and security analysis in domestic and global entities in the energy, technology, financial, and manufacturing industries. Here we go.
Thank you. So we're going to move initially really fast in this presentation because we have a lot of slides to go over. I'm going to start off. I'm going to talk about maybe 4 or 5 slides, and then Rich is going to come in and talk about the architecture and more technical details. And in the end, we're going to hopefully we'll be able to get to a demo for you guys. So that's why we're going to rush through. So if you can hold the questions to the end, I would really, really appreciate it so we could just cram it in as fast as possible. Okay, guys? Thanks. So, Extreme Couponing. So this is something that came out of a discussion I had with Richard, Berkeley Research Group guys. I said, hey, man, I need a box or a thing that can do this. And we talked about it. We chatted about it. He says, you know, Quincy, I'm kind of doing those things already. I've been doing that for quite some time. I said, yeah, but I wanted to do this, this, and this. So it ended up becoming something what I call the coupon box. And then so we've grown that quite a bit. And we hope that we're going to share this with you. We're going to share where we're going with this. And hopefully you guys will appreciate that and maybe adopt that and maybe help out on the project as well. So how many of you have already seen the previous talk, Parasite talkers here? So you guys are all primed and ready for this talk because this is more of the extreme version of that, if you think about it that way. Okay, so, you know, I always like to set this up, you know, what we're talking about. These are high-value targets. I considered, you know, critical services, airports, utilities, all those types of things, corporate, risk, you know, risk of intellectual property, those things. So if you guys have a look at the screen here, is there any types of, anything I missed here? Is anyone from an industry that's not on here? Because it sort of leads into what I'm saying is that there are remote sites at any of these locations. I mean, you have a headquarters, but, you know, the way we work now, we're either globally or nationally, we're distributed all over the place. And we need security solutions in those places as well. So that's where this is going. So, you know, it includes, you know, you can talk all day about oil and energy and asset inventory, pipeline, refineries, power grids, all that good stuff. We're not specifically going to just talk specifically about one of those industries, but we want you to think of this as that y'all have the same common problem throughout no matter what industry you're in. And that is, you have large and small sites. Some of your sites are manned, unmanned. Sometimes you have a technical resource on that site. Sometimes you don't. You need to connect to those sites quite often. You may need to update them. Maybe you don't update them. That's another reason why we're going to talk about the couponing box. So maybe you don't have lack of good testing and monitoring. How many of you would say I have the same amount of testing and monitoring at my remote sites that I do at my corporate headquarters? Nobody? So in the last talk, we had a couple of people raise their hand. I was really impressed. Okay, you got it. Okay, good, perfect. Someone, but I don't believe. Oh, you don't have remote sites, so there you go. Okay, all right. And then so what it really comes down to, there's often a lack of budget. You can't justify some of the sophisticated tools that we have at the corporate headquarters and then push them down to a site that has less than 5 or maybe 10 people there. It's just not cost effective. So you just plug up and pray and wait for a call for someone to call you. Like, is Angela here? No, she's not in here. So you get a call from someone. Okay, so some of the problems that we noticed, and we sort of try to mind map this out. What are the types of issues that are going on in a remote site? And we say, you may not know exactly which computers are there. You may have installed 5 computers there, but you don't know what's there now today. And you know if a new box just came online, maybe someone's bringing their own laptop in, maybe a vendor has swapped out a device. You don't know. You may or may not be doing the network assessments, vulnerability assessments, threat monitoring, cyber intelligence. How many of you are pushing the cyber intelligence that you're starting to get today that's starting to become commonplace and pushing that down to the remote sites? Or applying that intelligence to your remote sites. Same thing with network behavior analysis. How many of you have a good baseline on a small remote site? You just don't. I don't think you have it. That's one of the things I didn't have. So that we started looking into these solutions. And so, you look, Wi-Fi assessments, is there rogue access points coming on and off online in those remote sites, all those types of things. So what you guys will see in front of me, and I'm going to get into detail on this, but I have a few examples of the boxes that we have, going to a very small box to, purpose-built to a much larger box for various reasons, and I'll go over that in detail. So we need something easy to test and or monitor security solutions, remote sites. So the problem statement is we need it to be inexpensive, simple to deploy, secure authentication. It has to be secure itself. And provides the ability to use virtually any offensive or defensive tool that we already own or that we could, grab, install somewhere. There's Angela. Speak of the devil. So here's our potential solution. We call it extreme couponing. So you see this receipt here. I went through and started looking at, what is that, Pwning, that publishes all the numbers on the cost of cyber attacks. I started looking at their reports, and there were a few other reports that I tried to grab and consolidate on here in this retreat. And so defense, they're spending $14 billion. Transportation industry is spending about $1 billion a year on threat defense. And some of the other numbers down here I just made up. No, I really didn't. I tried to. I mean, I look at the reports and it's like they're just percentages. You're not telling me exactly how much it's actually costing. So I try to do some guesstimates. So these numbers aren't all that right, but hey, it looks good, right? So anyway, are you gonna take over from here?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So coupon. Get too close. So what is it, right? So it's a hardware and software solution. I'll go into a bit more detail on that. Obviously, there's hardware there all over here. It makes a single outbound connection to headquarters. So one of that communication thing we talked earlier today about reverse SSH and tunneling. We use that extensively here. The concept there is we expect, you may have remote sites and you're just connected to them fully. That just makes it easier for this solution, but we're making some assumptions that maybe this is a tighter security remote site. Maybe it's ICS equipment that's there, and you don't just allow anything inbound. So we make a single outbound connection back to our headquarters, if you will, and then reverse tunnel back through that, and we use all our tools there. We wanted it to be invisible, right? It allows the ability to run any tool on the target network, whether it's installed on the remote device or locally. The benefits, as Quincy mentioned, right? We want it to be cheap because we're going with the assumptions here that you might not have budget. There's really good cheap hardware out there. There's really good cheap software, open source. I go for smaller size. We'll talk about hardware later, but we wanted something easy, right, that you can mail. It's cheap. If it gets lost, to send a second one. Secure communication, this is the SSH part, and then we don't want to buy extra tool licenses. We want to use what we have, a few commercial tools we have, and then the open source bits of that. So matching the similar screen, there's plenty of open source, really good tools that are out there. So at Black Hat this year, I was amazed at the number of vendors that are there and the size of their booths. And I don't know, I got this weird, queasy, uneasy, greasy feeling that, I mean, there's so much money spent on those, right? The tool vendors, and they're out there, and we use commercial tools. You have to, and they're good. But we can't afford all those tools. There are great open source tools out there that meet every one of those areas that Quincy talked about that has a need. We'll show you a couple of those. We'll talk about a few of them. Let's talk about the architecture. Did anybody see our kind of 1.0 talk about this? We didn't even finish building the thing, and we had great ideas for 2.0. So we're on 2.0. We didn't finish 1.0, but we think we're on to something kind of big here for this one. So inexpensive commodity hardware, right? It's just, at the end of the day, it's a PC, right? It's a processor, it's memory, it's a hard drive of some kind. All right, that's easy. We get that. We want a minimal base Linux operating system. We'll talk about some of our solutions there, but really any Linux distro you like, we're going to show you on or just tell you about one that's like 20 megs in size. Super, super small, very base minimum, what we need to accomplish our mission of running these tools. And now the magic sauce, Docker for the win. So who uses Docker? Two people. So is everybody familiar with Docker? Containers, whatnot. So Docker is awesome. The containers, right, have been around forever in the Linux world, but it's finally gotten usable. So if you start watching trends going on, I think Docker's one of those big trends you're going to see a lot of. So we're using this container-based technology to run these security tools and to interconnect these sites. So the advantages of this Docker thing. So the ultra minimal OS. You can use any OS you want. If you're like, well, our standard is Ubuntu, that's what I know and love, that's all I'm going to ever use, you can totally use that here. Any flavor of Linux you can use this solution for. We're using various versions, right? We're demo on some of these. So we'll use Ubuntu because it's easier. But ultimately what we want to run is something called Rancher OS. It's an open source platform, but essentially it's a custom Linux OS built for Docker. And the entire thing is about 20 megs. So you can take a commodity piece of hardware, you run the OS, it's about 20 megs. That means I can use all the extra storage, memory, processing for all of my stuff, and not that, bloatware, all the stuff that I don't care about. Containers are isolated or integrated, right? So you can make these containers your tools. They can be kind of standalone things, and you can move them from one site to another. Real easy to do. Or you can integrate. So some of our tools, we'll talk about an elk stack, right, where you need multiple tools kind of chained together to do something. Well, you can integrate those. They can talk to one another. So you get a good deal of isolation or granular control. You can move these containers anywhere. Once you've built a container, that's the beauty of Docker. I think it's really intended for more change management, development. It's easy to go from development to production and just know it's going to work. So once you have these containers built, it doesn't matter what flavor of Linux you're running, you just run the container. It builds in just the bare minimum things it needs to run the application tool, whatever it is in that container. And it's ultra fast. So you expect, some operating systems are fast. I mean, this is, you hit the button and it's on, it's running, it's just there. It's bizarre, it's so fast. So I'm not a Docker expert, so I might butcher my explanations of Docker, so I would encourage you to read the websites and all. But I get into this conversation just the other day about, is this like virtualization? Is it VMware? And it's like, well, it's not, and they'll tell you it's not, but it's kind of like virtualization for an application. But you'll say you still have, right, base hardware, you have that's easy. You have a host OS. In our case, we want a very minimal Linux image. And instead of a hypervisor, now we have this Docker daemon. So it's a daemon that's running in that OS. And so the big difference, the big benefit is in VMware land or virtualization, you'll have a guest OS, and then you run your tools and things on top of that. Well, you take away that guest OS, and basically the libraries and things that you need from Linux, you just pull into the application. So if you're running Nmap, you just need the bare minimum things to run Nmap, and all that's in a container. Then you take that container and you can move it around anywhere. That's probably the best I can do about explaining Docker. So docker.com, read up on that. So I'm going to try to explain how the architecture is set up, or to give you some conception of what we're doing here. So we talk about Coupon at headquarters. I call headquarters, right, your main office. This is where you have your commercial tools installed, right? This is home base. We have our PC, right, the computing hardware, whatever that is, one of these boxes sitting here. You have the Linux operating system there. You have the Docker daemon, you have containers. So Quincy's a brilliant marketer in addition to a good security guy, but he came up with the Coupon mod. So that's going to have to be a logo for this somehow. So Coupon mod is the management console. You got to have a management console in anything you do. So Coupon mod is the management console for this whole Coupon infrastructure. So in our case, that runs as a container itself. And then in addition to that, we could run other security tools. Whatever we want to run on that, this is at headquarters. We could also run heavy apps, and that's Richie's term. So heavy app being Nexpose. I don't know that I would run Nexpose in a container. I haven't tried. Maybe I could. Maybe that's a good idea. We will try that. But maybe you have a heavy app. I would install that on the Linux OS for this headquarters box. Show you where that comes into play. So now we've got this remote site. So what do I want to do with the remote site? Well, I want another box. Does it have to be a big box? No, it could be a really small box. And the same thing runs. You've got this small base image, right? It's the same platform. You just have a management agent to speak to the console, just like every other console you've ever used. And we may run a different set of tools at a remote site depending on the needs. So in this picture, we've got the blue, so maybe this is more defensive, logging, monitoring type solution. Maybe we want to do more red team penetration type testing at the remote sites. So it doesn't matter. We can move tools, put them there, easily run them up, run them down. And you've got the communication path, so that's that SSH. I'll talk more about that. So what we're doing is reverse SSH tunneling. So the assumption is that these remote sites are more secure than maybe headquarters. So it's an ICS environment. It's some environment that it's hard to punch holes in the firewall inbound. So in this case, we're using SSH, one port, outbound connection. So I would say an outbound connection rather than inbound is more secure. It connects to our headquarters. We do a reverse tunnel back through that, and just that one port, we're running all of our communication for all the tools, all the management, all of those pieces. It's encrypted, right? We use certificates, so we know who our endpoints are. We exchange certificates, so we've got that. You can add multi-factor authentication. We haven't done that, but it's SSH. So if you don't know that concept, we just had a quick graphic on that. So normal SSH, right, you would just SSH to the box, right, and then you do your stuff through that connection. In reverse, it's the reverse, right? So it's connecting to us, and we actually go back, reverse tunnel through that to make our connection. We use this all the time for penetration testing when we place and sneak devices. It's on the parasite. That's what we're doing there. Works really, really well. Cost benefit, obviously this is cheap hardware. So the parasite's $130. It runs on that. There's $99 hardware up to, even the most expensive box is a few $1,000, right? It's a PC. Many of the security tools are open source. So a lot of what we use, they're really, really good tools. They're open source. And the other big piece is that your current investments actually work through this. So if you own that commercial license of Nexpose or Nessus or whatever it is, you can have that loaded at home base, and you actually use it to scan or against your remote site. So you don't have to buy a separate agent to put at the remote site and have those communicate. You can actually use your local instance.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to try to get through this without saying the word Nexpose, because I'm going to ask them to sponsor us next time we do this talk. So Coupon Box, purpose-built appliances. So we, once we've had a chance to talk to others about the appliances, we realized that we can take this further than just a red box for penetration testing. We could do some other things. So initially, we came with the idea of we just do audit and penetration testing, and then we say, well, why don't we do something for the blue team, the guys that do defensive things? And so we needed to look for some open source software for that. I'll show you on the next few slides. And also a green box. This came from another buddy of mine, Jeremiah over here. It's like, hey, you need something for the forensics guys. Maybe you need to drop something off or ship something to acquire images. Maybe you need to do some offline threat analysis of network data or something like that. So that, of course, that's going to require more power, bigger boxes, as you can see this bottom box here, more hard drive space. Maybe you want to ship the logs or consolidate logs or forward logs to this box as well. So another thing is the black box. We all like to play with honeypots, and so on that honeypot, Docker containers. If you think about it that way as well, we're talking about putting malware analysis on there so we can watch some of the things. I'm going to go over some of those honeypots that we've handpicked just for guys like you, especially in our industry with oil and gas and on gas stations and other things. So specific honeypots just for you guys. So here's some of the hardware. So on the small box we have here, Richard likes things no bigger than this, and I tend to go even bigger. Okay, so if you looked at his Parasite project, I mean it's just a little small USB plugs into the host, and it becomes takes over that host. He likes things like that, and that's okay. His focus is more on penetration testing and doing covert operations. So that makes sense, okay? But as where I work, it's more of it's planned. It's a red team exercise, a scenario. There's no need for us to truly sneak something in. Maybe we want to do an assessment at a remote site as well. So it has a different purpose. So it's purpose built. So and I encourage you guys that after the talk to come up and check out some of these, and I'm gonna give you some specs on these boxes: small, medium, large, or whatever. And there's a reason for it. One has one interface, as you can see here, but sometimes you may need something that has two interfaces. Maybe you want to do a man-in-the-middle sort of thing where you want to not just run a tap through it, but you want to maybe log all the packets. So yeah, I've used that really well. And then sometimes you need something a little bigger that has expansion slots. Maybe you want to put in this one I have an extra interface in it, but you might want to put a 4G card in there, right? You might want to put whatever a PCI slot that you need to add, but this has more space for additional hard drives. You can put additional 2 SSD hard drives in there, among some other things. I have more RAM in this one as well. And the same thing goes for them. It just gets bigger and bigger. This is more of like the forensics box that needs 16 terabytes is one that I have in there now. 16 terabytes I could drop it in. Awesome. So some of the other things we looked at early on is we went through, and this is not all of them, but we went through a lot of hardware, or I did at least, trying to figure out what I actually needed and what worked. At first I thought my smallest box was going to be this Odroid. It was awesome, but I was having some problems making it consistently boot because this is something I needed to ship out somewhere, and a non-technical person had to plug it up and it just had to work. It's cool, it's fast, it's an ARM-based. It's the same board that you have in your notes, your phones, the same board, except now it has all these peripheral connections to it. But it's a little flaky. It's fast, but it's a little flaky, and I decided I'm going to drop support for that. So of course you guys are very familiar with the Raspberry Pi, and so we're going to try to create some open source image where you can just download that image and run some coupon tools for that, because what's that entry point? $39 or something for the Raspberry Pi. How much is that? Anybody know? Real cheap. 30 bucks. Yeah. So, and of course the Parasite project, this is what the previous talk to this one, Richard talked about, just, well, maybe you don't have hardware, you just want to plug it up somewhere to someone's machine, and then leech, I wanted him to call it Leechy Pond, but he calls it Parasite. But you leech off of someone else. And then there's some other fanless type devices. So one of the things, and that's when looking at hardware, it's very important. So when you talk about chemical environments and plants and things like that, sometimes you can't always get something that has open, and it may cause sparks and cause fires or something. So these fanless type boxes are really handy. They're really handy for extreme temperatures, whether it's cold or hot. And so we looked for something like this. I looked at several different vendors. I didn't go with this particular vendor for the fanless because of the cost. I got this really cheap and I'll share some of those with you when you guys come up to me. I'll tell you offline how much I pay for this stuff. But this is, the goal is making sure it's cheap enough so for everyone to adopt. So some of the things, the software that's actually in these boxes. So if you're talking about a red box and a blue box, you got the red hats and the guys that are using this. So this is Kali Linux is on here, and these are running in containers. And what's really interesting, he's going to show you a demo of where he starts up. Are you guys familiar with Metasploit? Anybody here runs Metasploit? You know how when you first start Metasploit, it takes a while? We're really impressed at how fast Metasploit running in a Docker container starts up, because of all of the minimal services that are not there and present. Okay, so Burp Suite, which is my favorite tool. You guys use Burp Suite as well. And then, of course, you can always plug your license for Burp Suite, make it Burp Suite Pro. You can do that as well. Of course, Nessus. And I said I wouldn't mention the other companies, but of course, you can have all your wireless tools, including Kismet, if you're familiar with Kismet. Jeremiah is our wireless expert. He's using Aircrack and Blue Snarf and all these other wireless tools. And so if you go down to the blue box, we're running something that's very similar. We initially start off with using Security Onion. If you're not familiar with Security Onion, it has all of the, it has Suricata, Snort, all the offensive type monitoring tools, and it's open source. But we had to break Security Onion down, so we actually have our own version of sort of like Security Onion, because we had to put everything in a container. Okay, and of course, what's really cool that we discovered is we're running a thing called Critical Stack, which has an intelligence block list. So we're looking at, we have the capability of doing some IOC-based block list of how many million? 1.5 million capability of blocking IP addresses and DNS, and all this is open source different lists. So you can combine up to, I think it's almost 50 lists. I use 17 lists on mine. I've done some testing, and I said, I don't want my coupon box to tell me anything unless it's something really important that I need to follow up on. Yeah, I got adware on my network and my machine is going out, but I need something actionable. So I'm only down to about 17 out of the 50 block list. And also have OSEC, if you're familiar with that. That's an open source host IDS. It runs on Linux, it runs on Windows, and it automatically talks directly back to Bro IDS. And of course, you're running Snort. Bro IDS is like Snort Advanced, if you can speak like that. It doesn't just tell you that someone just did a SQL injection attack on your network. It says it did a SQL injection attack. This is what it looks like. If we look up the URL, that URL is sitting in this country, and it's also on the block list. It does a lot more, and it can also do on-the-fly analysis of files that are being transferred or trying to be uploaded to you. So it does a lot more than just IDS. Okay, and see, we're saying that the red box and blue box can be used at several remote locations, including rigs, offsite offshore vessels. So we were talking to a guy, I think after our second talk, someone said, hey, I need something like a red box or blue box, actually, sitting out on vessels that can come back and connect to me through satellites. And so we're working with him to see if we can get that implemented. And he thinks if we can do that, he's going to be extremely pleased. So Greenbox, reporting and analysis plus management. Of course, we got our coupon mon. We have our threat dashboards. We use an open source dashboard reporting called ElkStack. You guys may be familiar with that. So all of these tools, again, you notice that we're talking about a lot of tools, but the problem is learning all of these tools and getting them installed and getting them to work on the same box. That can be extremely difficult. We're accomplishing these things again through Docker containers that are they're self-contained, and so they're using the right libraries and all those things So that separation allows us to use various flavors of library support. And of course, we're running things like gas pot for the honey pot or the black box. And so Jeremiah over here is helping us on the black box side. He's running a few honey pots to see if they work. They're not always as easy or straightforward. You got to get them set up, configured, and we want these things to just turn on and work when we ship them. So we're trying to work out those bugs as well. And we think that in some cases you will not be able to run something in a container. So on our black box version, this is where we're going to put open source virtual machine, which is VirtualBox, and the configuration for those VirtualBox and management is the open source tool called Vagrant. So if you guys read that, read up on the Vagrant stuff. And so we're going to pre-configure some virtual machines for you to run and allow you to extend it as well. Okay, so ecosystem. What are we looking like on time? Should be at. We have 30 minutes left. Ooh, we're ahead.
We ended 45.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you look at the entire ecosystem. This is sort of a review of what we're looking at. You know, Richard talked about the reverse SSH tunnel from the coupon box, and we're talking about these containers are actually in the ecosystem. And what happens is if you install the Docker container for the blue box, what we're doing is we're taking several Docker containers that make up the Brody IDS, and we're launching multiple containers. What do you call it? You have stack them all together.
Compose.
Compose. So we compose multiple Docker containers. So if you say, I need to start Bro and I need to start Snort, well, they're two different Docker containers, but we're composing them and starting them all together, and they're pre-configured to be able to talk to each other. So, and we know that the blue box can handle intrusion detection, and it's, remember with the OSEC hosts are talking directly back to our Bro instance and our logs, and then we essentially have somewhat what we call I don't know, I wouldn't call it poor man's SIM because I think it works pretty good, but it's a SIM. So some of the things that we talk about, penetration testing into the red box, you can drop that box off at one of your point of sale systems. So you drop it off at gas stations, or what have you. And then we can also, again, we talked about the black box and the green box. We're going to have dashboard and management and things like that. So that's the entire ecosystem, and all of it reporting back to what we'll call headquarters. Today, it's for us on our testing, we're calling that the Amazon cloud. So we can actually manage and test this. And he's going to get to the demo in about a few minutes on the demo on how it's talking back to the cloud. And of course, again, we talked about the vessel, and you can do reverse SSH. And so you're doing all this stuff that's going on. So how are we going to make this work? Well, we're doing the testing on that, and we're looking for you guys to help out as well, but we're going to go into that. And so he's almost ready for the quick demo. So let's go ahead and give you a sneak peek of what it's looking like now.
All right, so Smart Man would have already had this preloaded for you. All right, so you don't need to worry about this SSH command. So what I'm going to show you, and it's not going to dazzle you. It's not that cool of a demo. It's cool that it all just works, right? You're just going to see it, and you're like, well, that's cool. It just works. But the magic's all behind the scenes, and that's the stuff we're hiding from you. So what we have, I've got an Amazon instance set up, Linux, whatever. In Amazon, I've got a box similar to this, I guess, sitting at my house. They're both up and running. They're running the Docker daemons, that whole stack that I showed. In one of these instances, I've got kind of the old stack, the blue box, I guess. The other one's kind of a red box. One's at my house. One's at Amazon. They are going to show up in the same management console. So all I'm doing, I'm just going to SSH to...
Hey, Richard, can you blow that up a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think they need to necessarily see this part, but... Yeah. All right, so all I'm doing is just some port forwarding here. This is where we need to blow this up. So this is CouponMon without the cool little logo. So that's like a #1 feature that we got to get going here. Let's see if I can make this. All right, so sorry I can't get that too much bigger. So here's the magic. This is just working. So this box is technically, I think, sitting at my house. one box, small box running that. This box is actually sitting on Amazon. The idea is this is the management interface. These are each a PC, if you will. You can just stack these. I can add these. We can have hundreds of them. We can have a dozen of them, whatever it is. Each one of these is a different site. So in this case, the remote site here, it's more of a red team, right? The offensive tools. So I've got Kali and Nmap and just PCB dump. Here at the house, I've got maybe more of the blue box stuff. I probably got those reversed, right? Probably more attacks at Amazon than there are at my house, but it was easy. So we've got the elk stack. So Quincy asked, who's used elk stack stuff? Look that up. I mean, it's a pretty cool thing. So elk stack stands for Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. The second little demo I'll show you is just a picture of how that works together. When Quincy talked about compose, you do a Docker compose. You've got all these parts that work together. You can run them independently, or you can compose them together. So elk stack, you want them to work together because one presents the data to the log. You know, the log pulls it here. It's like Splunk, I guess. It's kind of the open source Splunk. So right, this is just working. They're just up. They're communicating. It appears as if they're all here at headquarters, but these are remote sites everywhere. So I don't have anything too exciting, but I'll just show you. We can, let's see if I remember where.
So it looks like through the management console, he's clicked on the command line, and he's typing on the remote site box. Is that right?
Play by play. Yeah, so basically I just clicked on one of those Docker containers. In this case, this is the Kali one. I popped open a shell right there from the management console, and I'm just going to run Metasploit. So Metasploit depends on the hardware, right? The container was instantly up, and now we're firing up Metasploit, and it's there and running. Nmaps and all those kind of things. I mean, imagine just click it and it's there. It's ready to go. There's no boot times. There's none of that going on. And even the base OS doesn't take that long. So now I could use this. This is, you know, I'm at headquarters. I fire up Metasploit at whatever remote site I pick, do something. The data comes back. It's saved in a shared volume. You have complete flexibility, right? So the way it's set up today is how we kind of think it could be used. But again, as part of what we're looking for you is like, I really need to do this. And it can do it. It's very flexible. So we'll just close all this. Again, you know, you could execute shells on any of these. If you have a GUI-based tool, you can set up your browser to work with these. I mean, it's very flexible. So let me get out of this.
Is that 6 minutes left or more?
I'm just going to quickly show you the elk stack. Again, there's not a lot of good, sinister traffic going on my home network, thankfully, unless the kids are off. That.
By the way, I think we mentioned that he's connecting to this over our 4G hotspot over here.
So again, this is one of those things. It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. You're just showing me something. But so the elk stack. So what we've got going on this particular box is there's two interfaces. So one is, you know, the management interface, but it's just on my local network. The second interface, this is at the hardware level, right, is management mode, or you could have it in a tap, or you could just have it on a port span or whatever. So it's sniffing the traffic going on the other one. So I can present all that hardware back to an individual container that's running this elk stack. So it's just monitoring the network. Row IDS is running. It's just grabbing data, presents it to, I might have this backwards, but I guess Logstash grabs it, preps the logs, gives it to Elasticsearch, which is kind of like Splunk for searching for the data. And then Kibana is just kind of the presentation layer, and I can build dashboards and all this stuff. So you can have a very expensive, nice-looking dashboard. You just got to put a little bit of the time in to look at your data. So in this case, this is just number of, I don't know, packets or something going on. There really is nothing interesting here. I just kind of wanted to show you just quickly what you can do with this. I built a very basic dashboard. So you can But I mean, whatever you want to flag. If you're capturing those logs, that data's there. There's elements there that you could search on. You can build your own dashboards. You can run this. So you can have dashboards set all across your remote landscapes. You're monitoring there. You can pull those logs local. Everything just appears locally. But right, this is a distributed environment running all these tools.
Okay, where are we? So some of the capabilities, I'm going to jump through this. So, of course, I talked about 4G connection. You know, if you have one of the medium-sized boxes, you want to put a 4G card in there, you can have it reverse SSH back, especially in places where you either can't get on that local network, they won't let you, or you don't have wireless that reaches there. Maybe 4G, 3G works there. You can also put other peripherals like RF testing, radio frequency type testing is becoming really, really popular now. And also that it has a capability, a Bro built-in can do Modbus and DNP3 ready. So for you SCADA guys, you're covered. And so we're thinking that you can also perform ICS assessments with the red box. And then, of course, we talked about central management, honeypots, and all that. So the next steps now, and then Richard, you help me out, but we're looking for some either request participation in some of the beta testing, because we need to really figure out if we give you the medium-sized box, will that be enough for you, or do we need more power? We need you to tell us, I need a report in Kibana that looks like this, or what have you. And so we want to build out additional Dockers. Those, you guys, the two guys that talked about you had experience with Docker, we need your help. We need your help building some other Dockers. Of course, if you guys are familiar with Docker containers, we can publish those containers publicly. So we just do Docker push, and we send it up, and it goes in our account. So if you go up to what's the website, dockerhub.com, and you look for the word coupon, you're going to see our account. And under coupon, you're going to see all of our Docker containers publicly. And then if you wanted to pull one down, you would do Docker pull coupon / redbox, and it comes right back down to your machine. And you say, well, I don't have Ubuntu 12.04. It knows that, and it pulls down the Ubuntu 12.04 over the top of that layer. It's awesome. Okay, so we need to build out the management platform that he was showing you earlier. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, so workflows is something I think is important. So we've got kind of these individual containers. We've got to compose where we can piece stuff together. But we think we also want to build like workflows. So workflow being maybe you've got some junior security guys and you want them to run a particular type of assessment at a remote site, right? I could build a workflow that says, okay, remote site, basic level 1 is run an nmap scan, grab the ports, import the ports into Nessus, and then Nessus runs this very basic scan. Right, so that's it. Then you can build a workflow. So then I can just build a Docker workflow in this management console that says, okay, level 1 assessment, remote site, boom, it just does it, right? You get the data back. So those workflows are easy to do. I just don't know if I can think of all the crazy scenarios or the most important ones first. So we'd look for some feedback on that. So we can build that in that management platform. That's not that hard to do. And then on the Bro and Elk Stack stuff, you guys who use that in the field all the time, I think we could use your knowledge because there's some baseline level of setup for that would work for like 75% of the people. I'd like to get that build because you could just put it somewhere and you kind of expect it probably covers what you need, and then the experts can tweak it from there. So I kind of need to know what that 75% coverage is. The way I have it, might not be right. So that's what we got.
So we're asking you guys to follow us on Twitter, Extreme Couponing. Hit our website. Go check it out today. It explains the red box and green box concept. It has a few of the slides that you saw today as well at the bottom. And also, if you need to get a hold of Richard, this is Richard's contact. He's at thinkbrg.com. And also like to thank you guys, BRG, for loaning Richard over to me. And so we're hoping that you guys will adopt this concept and help us out. And this will all be public Docker containers for security. Okay? That's it. Any questions? You have questions?
Okay, let me start over in my radio voice. So in an ICS environment, sorry, I'm not going to stand up. In ICS environments, you don't want to put active testing tools on the network due to the adverse effects it could have on PLCs and things like that. And also, you don't want to put active tools on the hosts, the servers, and things like that, because it can be legacy systems. It's whatever. And so, one of the areas that that we had issues with was the limitations posed on us on being able to gather things from the host and things like that. Even if you're using sysinternals tools and things like that, putting a USB onto the host, operators are like, no, keep the USB away from my computer. You're not going to put anything active. So I guess using Dockers, the question is, does that keep, if, let's say, put something, maybe use Parasite before that or whatever, if I use a USB and using Dockers and using this, does that mean I can have tools on there, put it into a SCADA or ICS server system, and I can have tools, but it's not going to put anything onto that host? And then the second part of the question is, putting this into an ICS environment, and I guess using Docker, is this the same thing? How much confidence do I have putting this into an ICS environment where it's not going to throw traffic out? Obviously, active tools are going to do that, but how much confidence do I have that it's not going to put chatter on the network and things like that? So since you live in an ICS environment,
so I would test before you trust what I'm telling you. But so yes, you can put all those tools on your host device, right? It's not on your, like Parasite, right? You can run Dockers on Parasite, crazy stuff. That said, so in an IC environment, you can run, I see it more of like the passive sniffing monitor, right? It's checking that traffic. There's scripts that are published out there to do that. You can completely run any tool that you deem safe in a SCADA environment, which is a very small list. You can run those through the Dockers. It's a Linux-based OS, so it's definitely not as chatty as Windows. But at the end of the day, right, it is commoditized stuff. It's commodity hardware, it's Linux, and it's the same tools you probably use on a daily basis, just put together in what we think is a smart platform. So I wouldn't fully trust if you've got just that hyper, you barely touch it and breathe it and it falls apart. I don't trust that this solves that problem. But it does minimize, it's just the bare minimum you need to run the tool or the thing that you need to do. So that it does very well.
Another use case, of course, is you can always install one of the red boxes in your lab. And so you don't always have to go down to the basement to do your testing. You can do it at your desk remotely. Yeah. Any more questions? No? Okay, well, this concludes our talk. Thank you guys for showing up, and appreciate it.